So as we continue our series on the Marvel Universe versus the Punisher, we pick up now with issue number 2 and Frank Castle's attempts to track down and eliminate Spider-Man. So opening up with Castle engaging in a fight with the Incredible Hulk, Punisher continues the trend of providing bits and pieces of backstory to the events that unfolded during the collapse of society after the infection of Earth's superpowered community and normal humans. While Castle admits that he has avidly avoided fighting the Incredible Hulk due to his tremendous strength, he also tells us that following the infection of the world, while Castle had been forced to put down Captain America after he became infected, Wolverine had attempted to subdue the Hulk. Now something to take note of here is that Mayberry is actually setting a precedent in relation to adamantium. Where Marvel Comics as a whole have routinely established that adamantium is considered to be unbreakable, one of the biggest questions that has plagued comics is whether or not the unlimited strength of the Hulk could actually break adamantium at some point along the line. Answering this question, while this is an alternate reality and not part of the main Marvel continuity, Mayberry tells us that if the Hulk were made angry enough, he would actually be able to break adamantium, something demonstrated when he had broken Wolverine's arm off and consumed Wolverine entirely. In addition to this, Mayberry also tells us that despite his incredible strength, Hulk is not without his weaknesses. Taking aim with an arrow and using a knife as a tip, Castle is able to penetrate the orbital socket of the Hulk, penetrating his brain and killing him in the process. Now to be honest, I wouldn't really put too much stock in this, since Castle killing the Hulk in this manner really seems to be more about progressing the story more so than anything else, especially since the Hulk is popular enough that fans would undoubtedly want to see what had happened to his character. But when Castle's able to neutralize the Hulk, his attention is drawn by a cry for help from a normal human. Now as we go forward into this bit of the story, something I'd like you to take notice of is that Mayberry is essentially telling us that there's more going on than meets the eye. Referencing our last video and our discussion on how Punisher simply barges into situations with no real thought to the consequences, this trend continues when the calls of help lead him to a church where he finds a priest and a young girl housed within. While Castle is able to pull them up using a rope, in the midst of his efforts, he's attacked from behind by Venom. Now I'd like you to pay special attention to what happens within these next few pages, in that firstly, Mayberry does not tell us whether or not this version of Venom is Eddie Brock. While this isn't the most important thing, those individuals who were Venom fans largely wanted to know whether or not this was the case, to simply see if this reality had unfolded in a very similar way to the main Marvel continuity. But where Punisher pulls out a sonic pistol designed to disrupt the symbiotes due to their weakness to sonic vibrations, in the moments before he dies, Venom attempts to reason with Castle, who ignores the pleas and kills Venom without mercy. Now again, the reason why I want you to keep this in the back of your head is because this will largely impact what happens in the next video. But with the priest and the young girl and Punisher leaving the church, the group travels back to Castle's base of operations, where the priest provides a bit of backstory on society's collapse from his perspective. What he tells us is that prior to the outbreak, he had ran a soup kitchen in the Bronx, feeding both the homeless and the unemployed. Now to sidetrack for a second, one of the great aspects about this story is that Mayberry is taking real-world elements and throwing them in as a way to provide relatability and realism to the events as they're unfolding. What I mean here is that for those who are unfamiliar with the economic crisis of 2008, the catalyst for this collapse was found in the mortgage sector, due in large part to the subprime mortgage sector and people buying homes without any understanding of how mortgages worked or how to organize their finances. As a result, and following the collapse, multiple banks had stopped lending money to virtually anyone, including small businesses, resulting in massive layoffs and high levels of unemployment across the country. Incorporating this into the story, when the outbreak occurred and humanity began turning into cannibals, the soup kitchen was turned into a veritable house of horrors as several individuals began consuming the various humans inside. Taking to the streets and attempting to save those who appeared to be immune, the priest was forced to both watch innocent people die, but also kill individuals who attempted to harm him or those he was trying to save. In addition to this, the priest went on to explain that prior to Frank Castle's arrival, their group had numbered in 4, including a woman and another little girl, but that at some point in the night, they had seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving the priest to wonder whether or not they had left or been taken. Now the reason why Mayberry included this in the story was to highlight the idea that with society crumbling around them, instead of coming together and bonding over their experiences, instead, humanity is simply doing what they can to survive and casting aside all ties of dependence. Now one of the most important points made during the exchange between the priest and Frank Castle is that Castle is the exact same as the cannibals. The reason for this is that prior to the outbreak, the role of the Punisher in this alternate reality seems to have been identical to the mainstream Marvel continuity, and Castle routinely killing criminals and had amassed a reputation for himself as a cold-blooded murderer. At the same time, the cannibals had killed without mercy as well, meaning that in the eyes of normal humans, The only difference between the cannibals and Castle was that he didn't eat humans. However, in the midst of their discussion, Frank Castle and the priest are met with the return of Deadpool. Now, where Castle instructs the priest to take cover and allow him to deal with Deadpool, a funny little thing here is that Mayberry depicts Wade as being the same kind of slapstick mercenary from the mainstream continuity who cracks jokes and can be a little over annoying at times. In addition to this, where Castle indicates his intention to kill Wade yet again in a way that will keep him from reforming, it's revealed that the presence of Wade comes with a message informing Castle that there are actually more survivors who have not yet been consumed by the cannibals. Furthermore, the message provided by Deadpool states that in the eyes of Spider-Man and his ilk, the actions of the Punisher in killing the various cannibals he finds aren't necessarily an act of aggression, so much as Punisher protecting his own tribe of non-infected humans. Now again, as the reader, we're aware of the fact that this is not the case, and that Punisher is killing the cannibals since he was the cause of the outbreak and looks to eliminate the cannibals to atone for his actions. But the inclusion of this goes towards the argument of the priest in establishing that despite not being infected, Castle operates in the same capacity as the cannibals themselves. And so where Wade finally gets to the point of his arrival after rambling on for a few minutes, he informs Punisher that while Spider-Man has left him alone all this time, he now looks to have a sit down and requests the help of Castle for reasons unexplained. And so where Castle initially questions the offer and asking why both Deadpool and Spider-Man would believe him foolish enough to walk into the lion's den, Wade informs Castle that Spider-Man has already arrived at his location. And so as the issue comes to a close, with Frank Castle searching for the priest and the young boy, he discovers that Spider-Man has him held captive in an effort to force a sit-down between the two. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end, and in the next video, we'll pick up with the outbreak from the perspective of Spider-Man, as well as the events that led into Iron Man dying after being stuck in his armor for 5 days. With that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.